All righty. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Full Stack Chat podcast. My name is Brian Morrison. I am developer educator for Clerk, user authentication platform that's designed to get auth added into your apps as quickly as possible. Full Stack Chat is a podcast where I invite builders and dev tool creators on to chat about whether they're building something where we just have a casual conversation, or dev tools will talk about what. Sorry, I got some feedback there. Talked with builders or dev tool creators. With dev tool creators, we talk about what they're building, how it helps builders. But today, I'm joined by somebody special. Aaron Francis is a well-known builder across Twitter, and then Blue Sky is the spirit of Aaron Francis, which is a new development. I'm joined by the real one today. So Aaron and I are friends. We were former colleagues at a company. He has a very interesting career path that we're going to dive into today, and we're generally just going to talk about business and marketing for his media company, Try Hard Studios, which is apparently doing really well. So I'm excited just to hang out with Aaron and catch up, but we're going to have a good conversation for you. So Aaron, I'll pass it off to you, and you can kind of introduce yourself and what you do to the rest of the audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's very nice. Yeah, I don't know who started that Spirit of Aaron Francis Blue Sky account, but it is very funny, and they're doing a very good job. Yeah, so like Brian said, my name's Aaron Francis. Brian and I used to work together. And now me and one of our other coworkers, me and Steve Tenuto, have started a company where we make stuff. We make a lot of different stuff. Right now, we've been making a lot of videos. So we've created a couple database video courses, lots of YouTube videos, and we have lots of hopes and dreams, but we're trying to, trying not to overwhelm ourselves. And I don't know if that is working, but yes, Try Hard Studios is going quite well, and I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. Yeah. So one of the things I do with all my guests is I like to kick off with a little icebreaker, just to kind of ease you into the audience. You and I, normally it's also for me to get to know the person, but again, you and I kind of work together, so this is just for fun now. My question for you today is, what is and as I ask this question, just a reminder, we try and keep the conversation PG at best.
Oh, of course, always.
What is the most interesting comment you've ever written in a piece of code or read in a piece of code?
There was there was a time when I was trying to create a hash for something, and it wasn't secure. It didn't need to be secure. So y'all don't come at me. But I was MD5ing a string, like a user ID, and then adding a salt. And what I decided to throw into the MD5 hash so that nobody could ever guess it, because I'm a genius, was Aaron is number one exclamation. And I just left it there as kind of like a test. And we 100% shipped that to production, and it's still in production. So somewhere deep in the bowels of this code at this property tax company is some hashing function that just creates a random hash, and part of it is a salt that says Aaron is number one with like 3 exclamation points. So be careful what you use in testing, because it will probably end up in production.
Would you say perhaps that's the original spirit of Aaron Francis before
Yeah,
Blue Sky was even a thing?
It's still out there somewhere operating a property tax company.
Awesome. That's hilarious. So let's kind of move on to, I guess, the big topic we want to talk about today, which really is just kind of like try hard. You, if I recall correctly, used to be a software developer, then you worked into being kind of more of a technical content creator, which is kind of what we used to do at our previous company.
Mm-hmm.
And now you kind of branched off from there and are doing your own thing. Now, I know that you produce technical content through TryHard, but it kind of sounds like there might be some more things around the corner. So if you wouldn't mind, just cover your career path and like the decisions you made that got you to the point of what you're doing today with TryHard.
Yeah, I mean, the career path is circuitous, to say the least. I got my degree. I have a master's degree in taxation. So I got my undergrad and master's in accounting. Took the CPA exam, passed. Am a CPA. Worked for 1 year at Ernst & Young, and was like, man, this sucks. I hate being an accountant. So I left that pretty quickly, and from there, it's been all tech mostly. And have meandered through lots of different things. I think the biggest chunk of what I did was I was a CTO at that local property tax firm for 5 years. I started as the only developer and actually ended as the COO. I was running the whole thing. And it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. And then I got bored and I wanted to go like into tech more. And that's when you and I ended up working together at like a proper tech company. And there, it was weird because I had been the most technical person at every company that I had ever worked at, including the accounting firm. I was like writing macros in Excel that people thought I was a genius. And I was like, "Oh, it's just kind of more fun than doing taxes." But then I ended up at that company that we worked at together, and I was the least technical person. It was like there were all the people on, doing the Rails app, and then all the people doing the actual database stuff. And I was just kind of like the adorable content creator. And it was very weird. It just felt so bizarre to be like the least technical person at a company. That's never happened in my life. And so during that time, I think I discovered that one, I like creating content, and two, people like when I create content. And so I just kind of tried to follow where the market was telling me to go, and that's where I felt like it was pulling me. And so after exiting that company, Steve and I got together and we are like, hey, what if we just like kind of did the same thing we were doing at the old company, but we do it for ourselves. And so we took a bunch of interviews with companies and didn't feel super jazzed about too much, and then decided like, yeah, let's do this by ourselves. And so the first thing we did out of the gate was we did a course on SQLite, database SQLite, and then we did a course on Postgres, a different database. And so we tried a bunch of different we thought our business model was going to be one thing and it ended up being something different. And I think we have like kind of settled on we produce educational content for developers. And that has been kind of like our bread and butter so far.
Yeah, that's great. Now, what I know you linked up with a couple of pretty big names, at least in the tech startup space. How did some of those relationships come to be? Like, what kind of steps did you take in order to, effectively market what you're trying to do to these different companies?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting path as well there because in my previous role it was very public facing. And so that really helped elevate my like personal brand and connections to people in the industry, because for a while I was the mouthpiece of that company, on at least on Twitter and YouTube, and so people really associated me with that. And that like helped make a lot of friends, honestly, both with like individuals that we know, like, and trust, and companies that we like wanted to work with. And so then when we left, I tweeted that we had just gotten laid off, and it was like everyone on Twitter came out of the woodwork to support. And the next week after that, like, Steve and I took a ton of calls, and that was really great for making connections. And there were a few people on those calls, CEOs of companies, that were like, "Hey, we don't have a job for you, but if you go solo, we want to be your first client." It's like, this is weird. Really? You do? And so I think just being public and like putting stuff out there naturally attracts the type of people that you want to be friends with. And so that's kind of been like my meta secret my entire career, is like the more stuff you put out, the more people will be attracted to the stuff that you're doing, and the more opportunities it will give you. And that has just like totally proven true in my layoff story as well.
Yeah, yeah, I very similar. So I was laid off with Aaron too here, for everyone listening. And in my work at that company, even though I wasn't nearly as public as you are, like you had built so much more of a following than I've ever seen, to come towards me. Even I got a bunch of people reaching out afterwards and asking me for, consulting services, or, talking with getting a job. That's how I landed at Clerk, because I got a call pretty close, which Aaron had his hand in. That I appreciate. Thank you
Hmm.
publicly. I got a call pretty much right away afterwards, and they're like, "Hey, let's talk." And within a day, I landed at Clerk. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. One of my other friends recently kind of told me the one thing that he kind of follows as part of his motto is it's not who you know and it's not what you know, but it's what others know about you that
Mm,
will help you succeed in this world, I guess.
mhm.
And that really has resonated with me. I mean, I've got lots of those little like sayings and whatnot that have resonated with me over the years, but that was a really good one. So, all right. So back to try hard. So we talked about how you're connecting with others in the field.
Mhm.
Um, what else can you tell us about kind of like your mindset as far as like running your business? What do you see? What kind of things do you do on a regular day-to-day basis that I don't know, help grow the thing and make it be as successful as it is?
Yeah, I think, I think Steve and I are still trying. We're what? How long ago did we get laid off? Like 7, 8 months ago, something like that. So
Something
we're
like that.
still very early. And I think in some sense we have found a type of product market fit, even if it is content market fit. Because we don't sell a discrete product yet. Um, and I think one of the things that has helped us get there is just kind of like. Iterating on things as quickly as we can. And uh, some part of that feels frenetic, right? So, like, the more things you iterate on and try to figure out what's going to work, it looks like a lot of movement with no motion. And that's what it feels like sometimes. It feels like, God, we're doing 10 different things and I don't know if we can sustain this. And the answer is we can't sustain it, but we are trying to figure out what is the one thing that is going to sustain us moving forward. And so, like, in the beginning, we thought, Steve and I thought, a lot of companies wanted to hire us. And so, therefore, they will want to hire us as consultants to help make their developer education, developer marketing teams better. Like, that will be our offer to the market is we are, consultants for hire to level up your video production at your company. Great idea. Sounds super smart. Zero people wanted it. Nobody freaking wanted it. We were like, this is great. We're the geniuses of business. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to do that, but will you make videos for us? I'm like, oh, I don't want to, I can't make videos for everybody. Um, and so that was one of those things where we like fully went out, offered that to the market, and the market said, "No, don't do that. Try something else." And so we're like, "Shoot!" So we tried something else, and the something else, very quickly after that was, selling education. Like, we didn't invent anything new there, and so we moved at a breakneck pace to get a SQLite and Postgres course out the door, and it was too fast. Like, we moved too quickly, but it was one of those things where it's like we got to get off the ground. Like, we got to have money coming in. We have to have products in the market. We need to establish ourselves. And so we decided, yeah, we're gonna work at an unsustainable pace because we need money coming in and we need to like establish ourselves. And so now that we've shipped these two courses in 6 months or whatever, we're taking the foot off the gas a little bit and trying to figure out, okay, what do we want the shape of our business to look like? What do we want the shape of our lives to look like? Because the last 6 months have been exhausting personally. And so trying to figure out what is sustainable, and try to balance like, how do we mine this vein that is a rich vein? I'm not a miner, but it seems like a good metaphor. How do we mine this rich vein of like valuable stuff that we have found, but also how do we explore new territories such that when we're either tired of mining this or this vein runs out, we're ready to move on to the next thing. And so my nature is, uh okay, we did a thing, let's move on and explore something else. And Steve's nature is, we did a thing, we need to run it into the ground until we're sure that that thing is dead. And so the two of us together works out really well because, like, I'll finish a course and Steve's like, great, I am so excited to go do cold sales for this course. And I'm like, you're a freaking crazy person. I hear the words that you're saying, but I do not understand them. And so the two of us together work really well because I have this like frenetic energy of make, build new stuff, let's explore. And Steve has this calming executive energy of like, we have a product, we should sell it. And so we're trying to like, between the two of us going slightly different directions, we head in a nice neutral direction. And it's worked out really well so far.
Yeah, yeah, I worked with Steve a little bit too. Not nearly as closely as I did with you, Aaron, but Steve always did kind of give off that calming vibe.
Yes,
And it
totally.
sounds great that it sounds like his persona and the things that get him fired up really complement what you're doing, like you're saying.
Yes.
'Cause I definitely resonate with you more. Like I am the type of person that will get fired up, go create something, experiment and get the results from that experiment, and then I get
Yep.
excited about the next thing that I want to jump off to and start working on something else, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So the fact that you were able to do that consistently for 6 months, especially because, I don't know how you do it because I've got kids, but you've got like a small army at home. Like
Hmm.
you still look like it still seems like you're taking time to spend with your family and whatnot through your social posts. So
Hmm.
I think that's fantastic, and I commend you for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. So now you said you eventually will look into potentially a product.
Hmm.
Any more there, or is that just a teaser you're going to kind of leave us all with?
Sure. No, I can give you lots more. So, one thing, one thing that I think is true is that in the pursuit of something, you always have ideas for something else, right? And so, while you're uh, while you're building one thing, you notice everything that is wrong with that process, right? And so, people that are always like, "Oh, I don't have any ideas," I'm like, "Doesn't matter. Just pick anything and start moving on it." And then, as you're doing it, just note all of the places or all of the things about the process that suck, and you'll have more ideas than you know what to do with. And so, I think that is true generally, and that has been true specifically for Steve and I as we are, you know, as we're trying to schlep these, terabytes worth of video around the internet. We're like, boy, sure should be an easier way to do this. And so some of our ideas are around that. A lot of our ideas are like desktop applications, which is a little bit not in the zeitgeist right now. But when you're working with these massive video files, it's like, well, you've got a freaking M1 processor here, or an M4 if you got one of the new minis, and you could rip through some video, or you could put it on the internet and pay through the nose for some underpowered machine to do it. And so some of our ideas are around those types of things, like workflow that we are encountering that is not ideal. And oddly enough, Steve is also a developer and has like started building some desktop apps. And so some of our ideas are around that. Others are in terms of like on the database side, some of the database stuff that we're doing. There's a lot of utility in database applications, and not a lot of like, ugh, I hope no database application creators listening, but there's not a lot of like taste and style in like database applications. And so we're like, oh, this could be nicer, couldn't it? And so some of our ideas are around that. And then um, one of my frenetic pursuits that Steve has allowed me to pursue is a physical product. And so I think starting in January, I will, in pursuit of having good content to share and scratch my own itch a little bit, I will start building a small physical product that people can buy and follow along the journey on YouTube. And I think that'll serve a few purposes. It'll be like really fun, interesting content. But it's also like an exploration into the physical world to see if, given the distribution that we do have, can we run other products through those distribution channels, or is it strictly database education that this audience cares about, or is it a little bit broader? Because it'd be fun if it was a little bit broader. So those are some of the things that we're like trying to explore and figure out, is this a good idea or not, while maintaining the cash cow that like puts food on the family.
As if your ambition with starting a media company in the tech space wasn't enough, you're getting into
Yeah,
physical products.
yeah,
That's I'm excited to see where that journey leads because I've looked a little bit into the idea of creating and selling physical products, and
yeah,
just reading through like the general process of like the people you have to talk to and how you have to go about it just seems painful and
yeah,
does not
doesn't it?
interest me
And
personally
the
at all. But
margins suck.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's like it's so much easier. There's so much more profit, it feels like, in knowledge work. But my understanding like is if you can make a product that hits and hits good and you
Hmm.
can mass produce them, I mean that's potentially a massive windfall. Um,
Yeah, and a lot of like a lot of the way that Steve and I evaluate ideas is trying to think, does this hit two or three or four of our goals? Like, does this align? Are there a bunch of reasons that we should say yes to a thing? Because if there's one reason we should say yes to a thing, it's like, oh, that doesn't move me that much. And so when we think about like, let's say we think about like doing a sponsored video for somebody that is kind of random. It's like the one reason would be to get money, and that's good. Money is good. The love of money, however, is the root of all kinds of evil. But money is good, right? So that's a good thing. But if a project comes along and we're like, wait, we could get money from this, like this is really great for our audience. We get to learn something new. This like potentially gives us the ability to bundle other stuff that we've already done. That's when we start to think, we say that like the vectors are aligning. We've got two or three things that like this project could move forward just by being a single project. And so when we think about the physical product stuff, it's like, okay, well, this could move forward a very interesting and fun, content storyline. It moves forward potentially opening partnerships to some more normie brands like Shopify, Squarespace, stuff like that, which have bukus of money. And then it's also like we get to sell the thing when it's done. And so all of these things kind of coalesce to say like, yeah, that's a project worth taking, even if it is a little wacky, like even if the margins suck, well, it does have two or three other things going for it. And so maybe we make, many hundreds of dollars selling the physical product and many tens of thousands on the content side talking about the physical product. It's like, suddenly that makes sense. And so we try to evaluate it on like, can we get more than one thing out of each project?
so it almost sounds like you would use these different products to create some kind of funnel where people can purchase more than just one thing, and
Yes.
kind of is, I want to use the term upsell, but I don't know if that's the appropriate term for what you're talking about.
Sometimes cross sell is
Sometimes, yeah,
probably more
yeah,
accurate, but upsell is definitely on the table. Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Well, I got two more questions for you before
Yeah.
we wrap this thing up. I try and keep the interviews a little bit on the shorter side because I myself listen to 3-4 hour podcasts sometimes, and I know how grueling it could be to get through some of those. Um, my next question is, since you create technical content,
Hmm.
you have to have a balance of getting technical to learn deeply the things that you're going to educate people on,
Yeah.
because anyone who watches content, you could quickly suss out whether somebody actually knows what they're talking about on
Oh
YouTube, for
yeah.
example. So you got to really study it and learn that and experiment with it, but you also have to get
Mhm.
creative with the way that you present it and do it in a way that is friendly. So how do you balance the difference between the technical brain side of your brain and the creative side of your
Mhm.
brain, so to speak?
That is a good question that I don't know if I'm entirely capable of answering, but I'll give you my first thoughts. I think there to me is a certain type of art with the technicality. And I felt this about accounting, frankly. And that's why I ended up as an accountant, because in school, there was a certain type of it was very mentally pleasing when you balance the accounts. And I know that sounds insane, but it's like you imagine doing a puzzle and you make all the pieces fit. That's the same dopamine release that I got when I was an accountant in school. Accounting in practice is awful, but accounting in school is a delight. And that's the same dopamine release I get when I do something clever and or fast or creative in programming. And so those things to me are not entirely separate. I also think that I am, I don't know if unique, but I do think I am a little bit different than many people in the tech industry in that a lot of the technology that I use and create and learn about is itself a means to a different end. I think it is good, noble, and pure to like learn about technology for the sake of learning about technology. I think that's totally fine. That's great. But I think my perspective is I like to learn and understand these things deeply so that I can see these other things come to fruition. And that's one of the reasons, frankly, that I've stuck with a single framework, which happens to be Laravel, but I've stuck with a single framework for so long because my intent, my desire is to create things on the other side. I happen to use Laravel as a means to get there, and I find it very productive and a joy to use. But when a new framework comes out, I don't have a huge desire to go learn it because my desire is to build things at the end. And so that is part of, I think what pulls me along is I want to see discrete units of being come into existence, and the means by which I do that is programming. And in the future, maybe in the next 2 or 3 months, the means might be physical manufacturing. And so I feel like that's how it kind of ties all these things together. Is I'm headed in a direction and I'm taking different routes to get there. One is Laravel, one may be woodworking and desktop milling or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, that's great advice too. I wanna like really lean into that for just a moment. Because I work a lot with React, and realistically my React, in fact, you know what? I'm surprised it took us 25 minutes for Laravel to pop up in this conversation,
I
if
know,
I'm being
I'm getting
entirely
better.
honest.
Yeah.
So, but I echo the same sentiment, and you've tried to convince me to get on the Laravel train for a long time. And as exciting as it is, it's like there's a mental hurdle that I'd have to get over in order to actually understand the ecosystem and learn the ins and outs of it. And if I could accomplish the same goals with the frameworks that I know in React, like I'm not in a super rush to learn it, even though I want to, even though it's still on my backlog.
Hmm.
And I think I really wanted to highlight this for the people on the social media who like to banter about which framework is the best and which approach or which platform or whatever, right?
Hmm.
You can insert whatever topic you want into that. Like at the end of the day, if you're trying to build and ship things, which the big part of my target audience with this podcast is people who want to build and ship things, right? The technology matters significantly less than I think people think it does. So
Hmm.
if you're good with something, there's not going to be a reason that you should go off and learn the next big framework. If you could ship a SaaS, if you could ship a mobile app, if you could ship a product, do what you know that's going to get you from point A to point B faster. And that doesn't mean don't go explore other things. It just means, make sure if you're going to do it, carve out time to do it. Don't make that the focus of your work.
Yeah.
And with
I think
that, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just think the question needs to be asked, what are you optimizing for? So, like, if you're optimizing for learning, go learn and have a blast. And if you're optimizing for building, don't think that learning a new framework is going to get you closer to your building goal. Learning a new framework is never bad, but if you're optimizing for shipping, learning a new framework is counterproductive in that moment. And so you just have to kind of think like, what do I want right now? And it's okay to want either thing, just don't delude yourself that you want one thing and then you're taking the pursuit of another thing. You'll never get to where you want to go.
Yeah. One of my way early on jobs in the tech space, we tried adopting this thing, and I don't even know why it was called this, but they called it FedEx Fridays, where the
Mm.
idea being is that like, and I don't know if FedEx does this, but like Fridays were supposed to be the day that like we kind of clear the table and dedicate it as a day for learning, whether that's experimenting with a new language or
Mhm.
framework, whether that is even like, hey, let's all get together in the conference room and somebody can present what they're working on and teach the group
Mhm.
something, right? So it was a way to like build continuous education into the job itself. And it's something I've kind of tried to adopt. Unfortunately, workloads have a big habit of getting in the way of that.
Yeah, don't
It
they?
just what you just said reminded me of that, where it's like carving out space to learn and grow. I think
Mhm.
is super important, especially if you plan ahead for it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but with that, my last question I ask all of my guests is: do you have any advice beyond what we just spoke about for people who are kind of thinking or interested in getting into building and shipping products? Not side projects, not like I want to build a
Right.
to-do app and put it on GitHub, but like I want to build something for users, for people to use.
Um, yeah, lots of advice maybe. I think the first thing I would say is, I think you need to be talking about the thing you're building as you're building it. Because, if you're talking about if let's say you're talking about building out your product and nobody cares about your tweets or your videos or your whatever blue sky posts are called, nobody cares. Well, then when you release the thing, are they going to care then? Unlikely. I think a good example of this is when Adam Wathan was building out Kitetail back in the day. He was doing live streams about building out basically like a Gumroad competitor, called Kitetail. And during these streams, he kept copying over the CSS from project to project. And people were like, hey, what is that CSS you're using? And he's like, it's just this little CSS framework. Fast forward to today, and he's a cajillionaire from a CSS framework named Tailwind. And like that is a good, I think that is a good case study in if you're out there talking about this thing that you're building and everybody's like, yeah, cool. But what is that? That thing I love. That goes back to the like, just get in motion and you'll figure out the right path as you go, but you've got to be in motion. And so I think that's a big one, especially for developers who want to build something, that is the platonic ideal of what a product should be in quiet for 6 months or a year and then release it and they're like, yeah, well done, it's coded beautifully, but this isn't a problem that anybody has. And so the sooner you can figure that out, the better. And I think a good way to figure that out is if you were to tweet about it or post about it or blog about it, does anyone care? Because if nobody cares about like following the journey or the thing that you're doing, when you release the product, nobody's going to care. So my advice would be talk about it early and often and use that as like a barometer for what are people interested in, because you may find that they're terribly interested in it, or you may find that they're terribly interested in some slight variation of it that you can pivot to before you've sunk 6 months or a year into it.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, thanks again, Aaron, for joining me. With that, we're going to go ahead and end the stream here. But if you are interested in this type of content, if you're interested in following along with other builders or dev tool creators, fullstack.chat's the website to go to. There's a small Discord that's also linked there. You could find Full Stack Chat on all the popular podcasting platforms, or I stream this live to my YouTube channel. I want to shout out to Jason and Andreas for stopping by the stream to say hi. And Aaron, where can people find you?
Still on Twitter for now. Aaron D. Francis on Twitter, and on Blue Sky, Aaron, the Spirit of Aaron Francis or something. And follow the parody account over there until perhaps I'll show up on Blue Sky one day.
That'd be great. You're going to make Blue Sky collapse when you show up over there. Links to everything we talked about will be in the show notes, whether you're watching the recap on YouTube or whether you're listening along on your favorite podcast catcher. And with that, have a good Friday, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya.